This is the crazy compass. What I have here is a little compass. Now the compass is very, very special because it can guide me to wherever I want to go, but sometimes it gets broken. For instance, if I was to place the compass facing upwards, I could turn it around and the arrow on the other side is pointing that way, to the left. But if I was to turn it back around again, it would be pointing to the front, or upwards. Now that would seem normal, but the funny thing is if I was to put the arrow pointing downwards and then turn it around, this time it would be facing to the right. Again, you might not think anything strange about that. But let me take that arrow and point it in a diagonal direction such as this. Now that's facing this way, I can turn it around, and for some strange reason it seems to face in the complete opposite direction. It doesn't make much sense. When it should be facing one way, it should have turned and facing the other way as well. But this time, they seem to be facing the opposite way. Now I thought that was confusing for a few moments time, so then I turned it another way and I figured this way it could not go wrong. But then this time they were both facing the exact same way. It seemed to be very confusing indeed. But then I realised that there's another little trick that you could perform with a crazy arrow such as this. And so I took a glass of water and I placed that water onto the table, and knowing which way the arrow was supposed to go, I placed that compass behind the glass of water and it reversed direction as it went by. I knew something like this was a crazy optical illusion that was never going to guide me in the right way, which is when I realised that I was completely lost and there was no way this trick was going to go any further. Let me show you how this trick is done. This is a crazy optical illusion principle trick using the crazy compass illusion. Let me show you how to make this first. I'm going to take some cardboard. I've taken a small piece of cardboard. Now you can get this cardboard from any stationery shop, or what I used to do was get an old cereal box, cut open a small piece, cut a small square out of it where there wasn't much design on it, and I used to use that. You're also going to want a black Sharpie. On the piece of cardboard, you're going to draw an arrow pointing upwards. Now it doesn't have to be an arrow. You can draw any type of arrow, like a bow and arrow or a pointing finger. I'm going to do something nice and fancy on this arrow, so it looks a little more creative. Okay, now this is the important part. I'm going to turn that piece of paper over to the side, and this time the arrow is going to go in the, going to make a 90-degree rotation in the drawing. So we just draw that arrow. So if you can see that now, the arrow is pointing upwards on one side, and if I turn it over, it's pointing to the side on another when you turn it around. It doesn't make too much difference which way the arrow is pointing when you turn it onto its side, because it can work either way. But it's important that there's a 90-degree change in the direction of that arrow. Now the trick. The trick works pretty straightforward. What you do is you hold it in the straight, like a square, that's just so, and if you were to turn it around, the arrow can turn naturally as you would expect it to do. But if you were to turn the arrow in various other directions, it would always create the illusion of it being in the same pattern. So it doesn't matter how you turn the arrow, unless you turn it in this sense, and you get this idea. Now the real trick part happens when you hold it by the corners, because the corners means that when you turn it, the arrow seems to face the same in different angles than it was doing before. Try this yourself. You can actually try this. It's an optical illusion and it works for almost anything. In fact, if you hold it by the opposite angles, you can now make it face the same way. Now you can actually take this a step further, and what I've got over here is the same thing, but what I've done is I've taken the edges and I've cut off the four corners of the square to make a hexagonal, I think it is. And basically with this in mind, it means you can now hold it by the flat pieces on any edge and you have the same effect, only you no longer have the corners to try and disguise or utilise if you wish. So that's just by cutting out those corners. Now the final part of this illusion was to make the arrow turn backwards behind a glass of water. This again is another optical trick. All you need is a glass of water, fill it up to as much water as you want. And all you have to do is take that arrow, place it behind the glass, and you will see that the arrow flips when it's behind the water. This is because the properties of water bend light in such a way that it reverses the image. So you can take that arrow, reverse it, and place it right back out on the other side. It's a crazy optical illusion that can work with several other items as well. For instance, might you want to try taking pens, placing them behind the water to get weird effects, and placing all sorts of weird objects to see it reversed as it goes through. And especially if you get a really long item, a pen might do the job, because you get to see the normal pen here and the normal pen here, but it's weird in the middle. So depending on how big your item is. But essentially, you don't need to do anything. There's nothing really to learn. Just place the arrow behind the glass and you perform the effect. That's the crazy compass illusion. Have fun with it. It's great fun to try out and play with, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's try another trick.